The woman was in this butcher shop when two men arrived on a motorcycle and shot her several times in the head. She was moved to Belen's intermediate unit. Griselda Blanco, known as the Cocaine Queen, established the route from Medellin to the US. Consequently, she laid the groundwork for the entire Medellin cartel in the 70s.
A far cry from the glamour that such a powerful woman knew how to handle. But in reality, what end of life can be called glamorous? Not all women dream of being princesses. Some dream of being the queen of death. From Griselda Blanco to La Catrina, there were women who did not hesitate and set out to conquer the criminal world of drug trafficking with overwhelming success based on cunning and blood. But being at the top comes with a very high cost that is paid with fatal consequences. These women knew how to conquer a world dominated by men, and they conquered it by being just as or even more lethal than them. The ferocity of these women made them feared but also hated, with enemies everywhere. Both public security forces and rival cartels that in the end eliminated them in their own law. Brazil is not exempt from the scourge that all Latin American countries suffer, the growth of criminal gangs dedicated to drug trafficking. The land of carnival and joy has long been invaded by the sadness that criminals bring, a heavy atmosphere of fear and death. In a country where every poor child dreamed of being a footballer to have a better future, drug trafficking became a much faster route. Hello Kitty was known as the Lady of Drug Trafficking and had Rio de Janeiro wrapped up in her short criminal career. The city of Rio is experiencing a proliferation of criminal gangs and powerful drug lords, but the young Hello Kitty was the most fearsome and audacious of them all. She was born on December 25th of the year 99 on the hill of Concepcion Island in Niterói is in Rio de Janeiro. Long before she was the terrifying Hello Kitty, she was Ryan Nazareth Cardoso da Silveira and grew up in the evangelical communities of the region. Such was her devotion that she actually sang gospel in the evangelical parishes of the area. Obviously, no one imagined that she would exchange her musical notes to God for notes or bullets to death. At 19 years old, she found love and changed her destiny. She left the microphone with which she sang and exchanged it for a gun. Just like modern Bonnie and Clyde, Kitty and her boyfriend rode on his black motorcycle, and they robbed people and businesses in the area. The young woman's boyfriend lost his life in a shootout with the police in Minas Gerais in the year 2018. But despite this painful loss, the girl did not reflect on the lifestyle she adopted and went much deeper down that path. She moved to the Usabao slum, and through robberies, kidnappings, and extortions, she became a feared figure. Her fame then grew with each criminal act and attracted the attention not only of the authorities but also of more significant criminals. She was thus recruited and sponsored by Alessandro Luis Vieira Moura, known as Vintianos. He was the drug lord of the Salguero and San Gonzalo area in Rio de Janeiro and leader of the famous Red Command, one of the most famous criminal groups in all of Brazil. It was created in a Rio de Janeiro prison by common criminals and left-wing military in the 70s, while the country was suffering a bloody military dictatorship. Then by the late 70s, the band hit the streets of Rio where the free members, they dedicated themselves to minor crimes and bank robberies to provide money to those who were imprisoned to maintain a good quality of life and finance escape attempts. However, in the 80s, everything changed when the Bermelo Command ventured into the world of drug trafficking, and their alliances with Colombian cartels made them fierce and efficient also to control part of the business. As a member then, returning to this girl from the powerful band, it was that she earned the name of Hello Kitty, which made her immortal for the legends of the corridors of the favelas of Rio. She loved weapons and motorcycles, and she uploaded these tastes and boasted of her criminal lifestyle on social networks, posing with large caliber and war weapons, But not only the followers made her fame, but her ferocity, her violence. Several homicides and hits on rival gangs carried her mark, which made her the right hand of 20 años a crimimentor. Thus, the crazy one was only 22 years old and was already a legend in Lampa, to the point that a band of the new Brazilian funk dedicated a song to her and the combo she led with 20 años, the troupe of Nova Grisha. Similarly, the police had her in their sights. Reward posters for any information leading to her capture flooded the streets of the favelas of San Gonzalo and Todo Rio. She feared being caught, so on her social media she was always seen with a change of look to throw off the investigators. However, on July 15th of the year 2021, an anonymous tip led the police brigade to a house where supposedly a gang was holding a family hostage. At the place they found Hello Kitty, 20 years old, and a third accomplice named Michael Wonder, Miranda Marins, alias Playboy, and son of an important evangelical pastor from San Gonzalo.
And that's how Hello Kitty presented herself. On the motorcycles with the weaponry.
He used
Permanently. She was the youngest and most powerful drug dealer in Rio de Janeiro. She had escaped on more than one occasion from different police operations. In this last one, Carolina confronted the police and was beaten.
Hello Kitty confronted the police forces and fell alongside her mentor 20 years, although there are questions revolving around that last day of the drug trafficker, and it is that the reward offered for information was an insignificant number for the danger that comes with daring to turn in such a dangerous criminal. So the question is, was the anonymous call made by some rival crime gang? The answer may never be known, but both the police and her crime enemies celebrated the fall of the drug trafficking lady. Get ready, make yourself beautiful, take a picture, and go out to take a life. That's what the hit woman TikToker Nixie Padilla, also known as La Tilina, used to do. She had thousands of followers on the famous social network where she uploaded videos proudly showing off her weapons of war and the initials of her organization Gulf Cartel or Cartel del Golfo. The powerful cartel is the oldest Mexican criminal organization whose foundation dates back to the 30s in the Tamaulipas area with a privileged border with Texas for smuggling. It was the breeder of the Zetas, which resulted in a bloody internal war that put the area and the very existence of the Gulf Cartel in suspense, and which led to the fragmentation of this powerful organization into several factions like the Scorpions, the Meters, the Cyclones, the Panthers, the Reds, and all against all and all against one. The alliances changed and were renewed with more violence. And precisely in the Gulf Cartel Los Metros is where Mixie began her criminal path. Many point to this faction as the precursor of having women as hitmen in their ranks because they have an additional weapon, seduction, and deception of adversaries. One of the armed ranks of Los Metros was named after the Tiguines in honor of their charismatic and powerful leader Ibarque the Tiguin Segura. It was his idea to add women, and these hitman cell phones had several and were quite effective in taking down both rival drug traffickers and members of the police and also the Mexican army. And in turn, Mixie Padilla was undoubtedly one of the most outstanding, not only for her talent when it came to ending a life, but also for the violence she also exerted. She was called La Tilina because she was then married to the very same Tilin. Many stand out for their ferocity and cold pulse when making decisions, and Mixie Padilla was one of them. This woman was well known for uploading videos singing narco corridos and flaunting her lifestyle in the hitman business with her weapons and bulletproof vests. Along with her beauty, she was a real deadly cocktail for those who cross paths with her in real life. Because that only meant losing life. Then, on the 29th of March of the year 2022, Mixie uploaded a video to TikTok as was her custom, with a narco corrido song playing with her vest, her machine gun loaded and ready to go out with her pombo. And that would be her last video. That same day, while traveling in a white Toyota van with Tilin and 3 more members of the Tilins, she crossed paths with a convoy of 3 vehicles from the Mexican army, who, upon seeing them armed and recognizing them, proceeded to open fire. That moan at the end is Mixi Padilla, the TikTok bully or the hit woman, expressing her last pain as her life slipped away in that van, wearing the vest with the letters that gave her so much pride.
And they added us all up, dude. To all the acquaintances. Among them is Kane, dude. There's Eder, there's Commander Sergio Reynel. Everyone, dude.
At the site of the ambush, hundreds of spent cartridges and 2 burned-out patrol cars were left, on whose windshields narco messages signed by the Jalisco New Generation Cartel were placed.
It was with a bloodbath that the name of La Catrina gained a lot of relevance in the world of narco. We're not referring to the figure from Mexican folklore linked to the Day of the Dead. Maria Guadalupe Lopez Esquivel was the woman known as La Catrina and who led the group that ended the lives of 13 state police officers on October 14, 2019 in Aguililla, Michoacan. Long before she was the feared hit woman of the 4-letter cartel, she was the sweet daughter of a rancher and a housewife, and she grew up in Tecantepec, where they remember her as a good student with very high grades. However, neither school nor an honest life were to the liking of this teenager who preferred partying and the bad life. So it was in the year 2017 when she met a criminal she fell in love with and followed into the life of the mafia's narco. She went with the boy to Aguililla, where she joined the forces of the Jalisco New Generation Cartel under the command of the cell of Miguel Fernandez, the fearsome Mateo, a trusted man of Don Nemesio Seguera Cervantes, alias El Mencho. She quickly rose through the ranks of the 4 letters, considered a fierce and cold hit woman when it came to taking out her rivals. Although she also stood out for her beauty, posing with her gold-plated machine guns and her favorite weapon, a .22 caliber intensive care unit, in photos as sensual as they were dangerous that she uploaded to her social networks. She was also a devotee of Our Lady of the Holy Death, whom she had tattooed on one of her thighs, and due to her religious devotion, that's why she was nicknamed La Catrina, which she carried with pride and gratitude. So on the massacre day, the 13 police officers, where there were also 9 injured, she was the one who led the attack on the officers and could be heard over the radios receiving orders from M2 to leave threatening narcomantas at the scene of the crime. Her influence and power were crucial for this attack, as she had what she called the Falcon Patrols, a network of informants who told her the real-time location of the police convoy by radio and messages at the time of the attack. And so this operation that she led put her in the eye of the storm and one of the main targets of the state of Mexico. The bloodbath she unleashed had to be paid for, and it was when the police, through anonymous information, found the safe house where La Catrina was hiding. It was there that in January of the year 2020, she unsuccessfully faced the Mexican army and was killed. The officers' cameras were able to record her for the last time on her knees and stained with this red liquid that was pouring from her throat and other body wounds. A responder tried to calm her down while waiting for a helicopter to take her to a hospital to save her life. However, in that place, she was finally reached by what she called Saint Death after all. Since the 2014 emergence of the Santa Rosa de Lima cartel, Guanajuato became the bloodiest Mexican state due to the war unleashed with the 4-letter cartel. Led by Jose Antonio Yepes Ortiz, alias El Maro, they initially dedicated themselves to stealing quantities of fuel from Pemex pipelines. Thus, with the growth of their power, they began to branch out into other businesses, especially into white gold, which gave them the ability to become true military forces and expand to neighboring states like Querétaro and Michoacán, which also resulted in a brutal confrontation against the Jalisco New Generation Cartel of Mencho. El Maro, on the other hand, kept his circle of trust within the family, delegating operations and decisions to his brother's father and his sister Karen Lisbeth Yepes Ortiz. Karen managed to impose great respect among the subordinates of the Santa Rosa de Lima cartel. They saw her as a formidable, calculating woman with great cunning when it came to making decisions, which earned her the nickname La Señora. Thus, under her brother's orbit, she fell in love with one of the most reliable lieutenants in the organization, who was known as El Calamaro. In the midst of the war, then against Cuatro Letras, that is, the Jalisco New Generation Cartel, La Señora and El Calamaro decided to celebrate their wedding on January 11, 2020. The honorable appointment was at the Church of the Virgin of San Juan de los Lagos in the community of Pelavacas, in Celaya, in Guanajuato. Karen, dressed in white, was at the altar with her future husband, among her friends and family, when a group of armored trucks from the Jalisco New Generation Cartel showed up at the place and opened fire left and right. The target was El Maro of
This way, in August of the same year, El Maro was captured by the authorities. We knew you were at the wedding, son of your father.
Meanwhile, we left your sister and your lieutenant and Calamaro there.
And that's how all the dogs that keep supporting that loving son of their dog will end up. Thus, El Maro was apprehended by authorities in August of that year. His cartel was in a position too fragile and far from the power it once had. Control passed to his brother Rodolfo, El Rudy, who made alliances with the Scorpions of the Gulf Cartel and Colombian mercenaries to confront the Mencho cartel. When El Rudy was apprehended by officers in November of 2022, many assumed the end of Santa Rosa de Lima. However, a new shadowy leader took over with a heavy hand. In Tarimoro, in 1 month, 2 policemen were killed and a former commander, his sister-in-law, his father, and his 7-month-old niece were murdered at their home. There were also narco blockades and vehicle burnings in 5 municipalities. And on December 17th of CENEPAS 2022, the Salvatierra massacre occurred where 12 young people were wiped off the face of the earth by an armed group from the CSRL. But who was the dark hand behind the scenes that gave all these orders and revived the power of the Santa Rosa de Lima cartel? Well, let me tell you. Well, a group of cyber activists in 2023 hacked the databases of the Mexican army in what was called Guacamaya leaks. And among secret reports, it was revealed that the authorities were on the trail of Karen Yepes Ortiz, allegedly in charge of the Santa Rosa de Lima cartel. According to the investigation, the lady did not fall on her wedding day, and with cunning and patience, she built enough power to confront the Cuatro Letras by forging a new alliance with the Salazar's new people. But what do you think? Or if you're from there, tell me, did she survive the attack on her wedding, or is it someone else who will want to avenge the loss of her husband? Leave it in the comments for me. As we said before, in the last decade, the number of women within the cartels has grown exponentially. And there was one group that stood out above all, a hit squad made up entirely of women. It was called the Skinny Girls Cartel. Criminal organizations adopt young girls at a very young age and train them to be well-oiled execution machines. This group was named this way because they all had the same appearance. Very young women, thin, slender, hair pulled back and very tight, sunglasses and high-caliber machine guns. Their childlike appearance made them go unnoticed among their victims, which made them very effective. Jocelyn Alejandra Niño was part of this group of hit women and was hired by the Cyclones faction of the Gulf Cartel. She operated in the northern zone of Tamaulipas, keeping rivals at bay who were the Scorpions and the Meters. Her youthful and thin appearance also gave her the alias of La Placa, and not only because of the group she belonged to, but also because her figure reminded of the Santa Muerte, to whom those who put their lives at risk worship, daily and not just from your own generation. But well, the young woman gained notoriety when in January of the year 2015, someone posted a photo of her on the internet forum Valor por Tamaulipas, a site where journalists and civilians anonymously report criminals and misdeeds to help authorities in their hunting and arrest efforts. In the photo, you can see the skinny girl in a humble room, smiling, and a large machine gun. The warmth of her smile contrasts with the coldness. She had to take a life. That call to fame was her worst enemy because she was identified. She had become a target. That's how she was captured between the 12th and 13th of April of the year 2015 near the Bravo River by members of the Metros. She was shot in the head and killed. On the 14th of April, she was found in the worst possible way. At the border bridge of Matamoros, Tamaulipas and Brosville, Texas, a cooler and a narco manta with threats to those who helped the cyclones were found. It was signed by the Metros. Inside the cooler, La Flaca was found in pieces. She was not alone. In the grim image, she was accompanied by a man also in pieces and another woman, later identified as a police officer. Ironically, La Flaca was recognized by that photo that sealed her fate, where the tattoo on her forearm, her last name in large letters, was clearly visible. Much is said about the violence of the drug trade in Mexico or Colombia, but many also forget about Central America, the main route for shipments to get from one point to another. The Lima's family in Guatemala is a name that makes more than one person tremble. The line between drug traffickers and politicians blurs when talking about the mayor's office of Jutiapa, Muyuta, a border state with El Salvador. Within this family, two sisters stood out, Mayra and Marixa, the terror of Jutiapa. And there were those who said that where they went, death followed. Mayra, being the older one, was the visible head in the organization of drug trafficking in a bloody struggle to maintain control of the border with El Salvador. The best way was to disguise themselves as politicians, something that was assured thanks to her brother Magnum Lemus, mayor of Jutiapa. Much was said about Mayra, and the rumor always magnified her reputation as a lady of evil. This rumor stated that she took the life of her husband and dumped his body in another city. She was never tried or accused for this crime, but on the streets everyone knew that it was she who took that life. And so many others, because in Jutiapa, running for mayor was a direct ticket to the cemetery. Mayra was the one who ordered the trip. However, she herself was targeted by criminal gangs seeking control of the area. In the year 2006, while traveling with her brother, Mayor Magnum, and several relatives, their vehicle was intercepted by a van from which some men got out and opened fire in Mazalba. In the attack, Mayra and Magnum survived, but 4 members of their family lost their lives, including Jennifer, a 17-year-old girl and daughter of Maritza. This event turned the mother into an iceberg of hatred as well, and Mayra's right hand. Then, in 2009, Magnum Lemus Perez died of a heart attack during his term as mayor, so Mayra ran for the position. As we said, in this place the law of the West rules, and the line between criminals and politicians is almost invisible. Thus, in the middle of the campaign to access the government, a meeting was held at the Los Cuernos Hotel in the city of Pedro de Alvarado in Jutiapa, Moyuta. Mayra showed up with her bodyguard staff. It was February 17, 2011. The polls had her as the favorite to win the elections. However, someone had other plans. Several trucks arrived at the location, and men armed to the teeth got out, who opened fire indiscriminately without asking. Marixa was in her armored truck relatively close by when she heard the gunshots. She went to the location with her bodyguard, but they were repelled by the attacks. She found her sister Mayra in the back office where
she arrived crawling.
She was raised in that very place. Marixa saw Mayra's lifeless body in a pool of her own blood. her face disfigured by the shots fired at her face. Aritzel took Myra's place in business and politics, and it was always suspected that the order to end her family came from the mayor of Utiapa, Roberto Marroquin Fuentes. Until she was captured, she tried to take his life 3 times, and due to her spectacular escapes from maximum security prison, she was called the Chapo Guzman of Guatemala.
Showing her bravery by demonstrating that it was like that she gave orders. Because I would say that the only thing she had was, and I don't call it intelligence, but will to stand out, and that she was a very cold-blooded killer. Because you have to see that people admire and say, oh, how did she manage to build an empire?
The drug empire was managed the easiest simply by not having a heart.
Griselda Blanco left home early to survive on Medellin's streets, among thugs and dangers she knew. To shape her fate, she turned to prostitution, theft, and by age 15 was a formidable criminal. Love never kept her away, however, from shady business. In fact, it made her delve deeper and deeper. First, she was married to a counterfeiter and alcoholic with whom she had 3 children. It is said that her first husband fled the house due to threats from Griselda and died due to cirrhosis. Others swear it was a heart attack, but many suspect or point out that he was murdered on orders from Griselda. In the 70s, she began a relationship with Alberto Bravo, who introduced her into drug trafficking. First as the boss's wife since they got married and moved to the Latin neighborhood of Queens in New York. However, the power dynamics were about to shift. The business progressed as Griselda's power did. Her presence was so strong and her personality so intimidating that everyone called her the boss, relegating Bravo to the background. In 1975, she was accused by the Drug Enforcement Administration in what was up to that point the largest narcotics case in history. Back in Colombia, she settled in Medellin and capitalized on her husband's business, whom she eliminated in a bar altercation. It wouldn't be until her 3rd husband, whom she also took the life of, named Dario Sepulveda, that she would earn the name or nickname of the Black Widow. The boss was stronger than ever and fearlessly returned to the United States, this time in Miami, where she opened the main routes for the drug trade. Such was her relevance in the world of crime that she advised the young Pablo Escobar, and thanks to her the Medellin cartel was opened, which flooded the northern country with its product. Drug trafficking was the domain absolutely of men in those times, so she forged her respect based on cruelty and ferocity and was paving the way for the world of women in the narco. Then at her peak, she lived a high life with parties that lasted days. She was addicted to intimacy, and it was said that she would take off the top part in the mornings to her occasional lovers. Her volatile and violent character made her dangerous even to Pablo Escobar himself. However, her bloodlust led her to have more and more enemies, and the body count on the streets of Miami led the Drug Enforcement Administration to focus exclusively on her, resulting in her capture on February 17, 1985. While in prison, she married for the 4th time, now to Charles Cosby, a young drug dealer from Los Angeles who admired her and whom she met through correspondence. But the love lasted very little time. Griselda planned and ordered her new husband to travel to New York and kidnap the son of the late President John F. Kennedy. She would use him to pressure the government and get a sentence reduction. However, her partner regretted it and sold out his beloved. Griselda finally served her sentence, was released in 2004 and deported to Colombia, where she lived off the criminal radar in an affluent neighborhood of Medellin. But the enemies she accumulated did not forget her, because she took the lives of many, perhaps hundreds, and the mafia never forgets. Thus, on September 3rd of the year 2012, as she was leaving a butcher shop, a hitman on a motorcycle ran her down on the sidewalk, taking her life instantly. Finally, the world of drug trafficking, due to the brutality it handles, imagines that it is exclusively for men more prone to violence. However, these women have left their mark. From hit women to mafia bosses, Each one was fierce in her own way, and her thirst for blood put her on par with any man of her time. They even scared many of them, whether by police authorities or the army or cartels or rival mafias. The success of these women met the same end. Their jewels were stained with their blood because they ended up dead from the same violence they generated. Remember that on this channel, videos are uploaded on Monday, Wednesday, Friday, and Sunday. There is also the secondary channel called Many More Mysteries, where similar topics are uploaded on Tuesday, Thursday, and Saturday.